Hey guys, how are you all doing? Welcome to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Naruto was abandoned and neglected by his parents, and Naruto built his empire in Akame Kill World, Part 1. So before we start, go check out the author of this fanfic, 10,000 Future Naruto, link is in the description. Also subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Let's start the story. Naruto Uzumaki, Konoha's biggest knucklehead shinobi, and the pronounced demon brat sat in Ichiraku's ramen stand with the sound of rain and thunder in the background. No other customers were willing to enter while the demon brat was around, not even the shinobi. Naruto didn't mind though, having already been used to the discrimination over the years. Rather, he focused on something else. It wasn't all that surprising seeing Naruto in such a state, spacing out, and eyes void of life. After all, many horrifying acts have been done onto him time and again during his 9-year life. He survived the beatings, the whispers, and the constant destruction of his belongings and household. He even adapted to these by carrying what he owned in his pockets. From anyone watching over him, it would come as a surprise that he hadn't already snapped and lost all sense of reasoning. Instead, people outside Konoha would see another innocent, cheerful boy with a dream to become Hokage. That, however, was all at risk. Currently, we find Naruto mulling over prior events that only transpired a few hours ago. This, on top of the horrible week he had been having so far, was speculation for concern. His problem started with the loss of someone that actually cared for him. However, today's revelations have maxed out what little perseverance he had of the village, his mental fortitude forever scarred. Flashback. Naruto awoke to no water or electricity due to the landlord cutting them off and demanding payment for his stay or to leave his property, something he had no choice but to disagree to. His accommodation had already been set too high, with him being special. That, and compared to what little income he received, left him with little to nothing to work with. Sometimes Naruto would starve, and the only reason he hadn't done so yet was due to Ayame and her father providing cheaper and sometimes free food in their stand. Those two people were the closest to him right now, and he cared for them deeply. He truly cared for them, and if push came to shove, he wouldn't mind giving his life to them in gratitude. Following the disagreement at the start of the new day, an ANBU agent eventually called Naruto to Sarutobi's office. He proceeded to get a new set of clothes and looked scurried through his cupboard for anything to wear, having noticed how ragged, ugly, and dirty his clothes were. He always liked orange, but as a ninja in training, it was something simply couldn't wear. As much as he wanted something else better, it was the only thing the civilians would sell to Naruto in their pitiful attempts to get him killed. Naruto knew what happened to his clothes, as it was common throughout his life. He always locked the door, but on occasion the landlord would open it up and let people inside to trash his apartment. It was the sole reason why his apartment was barely livable, being full of holes, broken windows, and deplorable furniture. To add insult to the injury, he was required to pay it since he damaged the property, or would be kicked out just like the other apartments he stayed at. After attaining the best jumpsuit he could find, Naruto proceeded to the Hokage's office, ignoring the stares and whispers sent his way. Storm clouds gathered overhead, but Naruto paid no attention to the sudden change in weather. Naruto wouldn't notice till later how painful the storm would be, adding insult to his injury. After making his way to the Hokage tower, bypassing all the glares and whispering, Naruto was greeted by Sarutobi outside, a rare occurrence since meetings usually took place in his office. Naruto analyzed him and noticed his sad facial expression, seeing pain and guilt-ridden eyes. Naruto decided it was best not to question him on the issue and chalked it up to work and stress, since it wasn't the only time he was sad. Guess old age was getting to him. Sarutobi looked at Naruto as he worked overtime to get his mood back in order. He began by questioning him on his progress with his education in the Ninja Academy, but that was a terrible attempt to do so, as he knew the truth, and that Naruto wasn't making much progress due to the bias of teachers working against him, having already resulted in him failing once before. To top it off, Irika, the only teacher that respected Naruto, was killed by Mizuki in the scroll incident while he watched on. Sure, Naruto had won utilizing a vast amount of shadow clones, returning the favor to the traitor through slow torture, but the damage was done. Naruto, the bright, cheerful child, hadn't returned to his normal state all week and was lost and confused. One wrong move would set him off, and Sarutobi didn't want to see that happen. Naruto in the end replied to Sarutobi's question, stating that his education was improving, but his usual cheerfulness was void from his words. Naruto noticed Sarutobi's sigh and accepted the answer, and proceeded to escort him to his office and get the meeting over and done with. On the way, his Gigi would apologize profusely on what would transpire, even if he had no idea what was going on. It couldn't be as bad as things already were, right? It took only a minute for them to arrive at the office, and Sarutobi specifically told him to keep an open mind, with his voice still full of remorse. He hoped that one day Naruto would forgive him, or at least understand what he did and why. Slowly and cautiously he opened the door knowing that this event would forever scar him in the young child's eyes. The duo walked into the office, and were greeted by the sight of Yondaime, the yellow flash of Konoha, and Naruto's prior hero sitting on the Kage seat along with a woman, and 2 kids by his right. He noticed the features of the females. First, the older woman had noticeable long red hair going down to her waist, and held one of the children who bore great resemblance to her, and looked at him with curious, innocent eyes. The final female in the room, who was most likely around his age, surprisingly looked like he was no other than younger, with 2 pigtails, sun-kissed blonde hair, and was detailed even down to the whisker marks on her cheeks. It made him slightly happy that there was someone else out there that bore similar features to him. However, that excitement was not likely to last with the news that followed. Naruto was astounded to find the 4th Hokage alive, and well, with what he assumed was his family standing by him. He wondered what was going on, and what this had to do with this. Sure, he was honored, and all having been called up personally, but why signal him out? Was it because he sealed the Kyuubi into him? Did he want to finish the job like the villagers wanted? That thought scared Naruto. The following interaction would be similar to Project Train's story for the love of family. I PM'd him, and got permission. Ah, Naruto, I'm glad you're here, Minato said with a foxy grin similar to Naruto's own. Look at you, so handsome already. You have your father's looks alright, the red-headed woman gushed. Father? Naruto slowly registered, unsure where the conversation was going. As far as he knew, he was an orphan, and his parents had died during the Kyuubi incident. Did these people know my parents? Were they friends? Was the primary thought going through his head. Sure, he was a bit unsure why the Kyuubi was sealed into him in the first place, but maybe the reason was his parents, and they were close. What was said next was not what he expected, and, as if Kami was watching the scenes unfold, she matched the suspense with rain and thunder. That's right, son. I told you he'd take after me, didn't I, Kushina? Minato said, looking at his wife, and ignoring the sudden storm in the background. TCH, whatever, he still has my face. Kushina playfully jabbed, unaware of the grave mistake their antics just made. As if trying to clarify the situation, Sarutobi spoke to Naruto. I'm sure you're familiar with the Yondaime Hokage, and this is Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze. They are your parents. He began slowly to ensure he fully understood what they meant, unsure if this was the right way to go about things. Naruto stood there in shock for a long time, being unable to fathom the situation. He was extremely quiet, almost showing no signs of breathing, which worried his parents and siblings. Sochi, are you okay? Kushina asked, looking at her son in worry. Naruto didn't respond, instead looked down with hair bangs covering his eyes. Now I know what you must be thinking. How come it took us this long to come home? Well, with Jiraiya and Tsunade taking care of you, we figured we'd wait a while and train Naruto a bit more. Why, I bet those 2 Sannin had been beating you to the ground with how serious they were when it came to training. Oh yes, I'd like you to meet your 2 sisters, Minato said, cheerfully trying to lighten the mood, as he motioned to the older sister by his mother's side, and the younger sister in the arms of Kushina. Is that Naruto Nizan? The little girl asked her older sister softly, as Kushina gently rocked her side to side. Yes, Narumi-chan. That's Onizan, Naruko replied warmly to her little sister. Hello Naruto Nizan, I'm Naruko, and I'm your younger twin. This is Narumi, and she's the youngest of us. I've wanted to meet you for a long time now, Nizan, and I'm so happy and honored to finally meet you, Naruko said, as she smiled warmly at her brother and bowed. Naruto still didn't respond, and just looked at the floor, unable to think or look at the family he had missed out on. Still they ignored his lack of reaction, and continued. They've always wanted to meet you ever since we told them they had an older brother. Gosh, it seemed like yesterday when the Q. That's enough, Minato, Sarutobi cut in. He understood Minato's excitement in seeing his son after all the years he staged his death, leaving Naruto in the hands of Tsunade and Jiraiya. But Minato didn't know of what happened while he left Naruto at the mercy of vengeful villagers who despised the demon brat. Naruto had only recently found out about his tenant, who is linked to his own life in the most horrid way possible, and the more Minato continued on, the greater the grave he dug. He doubted their cheery approach they took to the situation was helping Naruto at all, and was likely having the opposite effect. What is Sarutobi? Minato asked. I told you to hear me out before you did anything, but did you listen? No, you have no idea what you've done. You and Kushina have made a grave mistake, Sarutobi said, as his voice volume increased with every word. What are you talking about, Sarutobi? Kushina questioned, unsure what the problem was. So you know, Sarutobi-sama, Naruto asked, not to move his attention away from the floor. Naruto understood now. He couldn't trust Sarutobi. He had lied to him all these years, and what's worse, he's been putting up with this crap all his life. Sarutobi flinched at the sudden respect change Naruto gave to him, yet still he replied, yes Naruto, I know Minato and Kushina, and I can't begin to express how sorry I am for not telling you," he spoke sadly. It was clear that Naruto no longer trusted him, and he wouldn't be surprised if he hated him. Hell, he hated himself right now. He only knew about Minato and Kushina's disappearance after the Kyuubi attack, with a letter stating that Minato had trusted Jiraiya and Tsunade to look after as his godparents, especially when they were the best teachers around to protect and train Naruto to control the entirety of the Kyuubi. They, on the other hand, needed to maintain secrecy to gain an edge against the masked man and train Naruto to prepare for the inevitable battle. This separate training would optimize the amount of knowledge they can cover for the twins, and the village would grow stronger as a result. They believed this was the best way to strengthen the will of fire, the fire that burns with strength and determination. He couldn't say anything because it was an S-rank secret, sweetie. Kushina cooed, hoping to get her son to look at them. "And I'm sure you know all about that since you're in the Ninja Academy, if what I read is correct," Minato said, looking at a paper. "Minato, we really need to talk. These are not happy times, and I'm sorry things didn't go the way you hoped all those years ago," Sarutobi said, looking at Naruto in sadness. "Am I free to go, Sarutobi-sama?" Naruto asked emotionlessly. "But Sochi, yes, you're free to go, and for what it's worth, I'm sorry." Sarutobi continued, ignoring the furious look Kushina sent his way, as Naruto left the office, not bothering to dignify his apology. Naruto had left the office and walked down the stairs, limping towards the exit in a daze. It was raining heavily, with the occasional thunderclap going off, yet Naruto continued to walk out, ignoring it all. It was raining heavily, and nobody was around. The ground was slippery with mud, but Naruto paid no mind. He was mulling over what had happened, and felt sad and sick every time he thought over it. He subconsciously made his way to Ichiraku's ramen, hoping to clear his mind with ramen. Flashback end. Naruto stared down his bowl of ramen, which was given to him in the house simply because Ayame noticed that he was especially sad today. Ayame took this opportunity to talk to him over the counter. She always liked Naruto, and saw him as a cheerful little brother regardless of the horrible life he lived, and seeing him in such a state really tore at her. At first their relationship was a customer to worker. However, as time moved on with the more frequent visits from Naruto, they got to know each other more. This was mainly brought about because of the rumors of the demon brat and what life he lived. Ayame didn't see Naruto as any form of demon, but instead saw an innocent child caught up in the hate of the world. For that, she took it upon herself to watch over him when she could, along with her father. They tried adopting him. However, Naruto refused in order to keep them safe. She understood where he was coming from and appreciated his resolve, but it didn't mean she had to like it. She wished the villagers would see him for who he was, not what he contained. Ayame decided to take some time off since no one else was likely to come, and took the opportunity to talk to Naruto to find out what was wrong. "Naruto, what's wrong? You haven't touched your bowl of ramen, and that isn't like you. You usually have eaten 4 by now." She giggled slightly at the memory of his addiction. There was silence between them for a good minute, with the only sound of rain and thunder in the background. Then, some things happened because of his lack of response. Naruto continued to stare down at the full ramen bowl, eyes void of emotion and the cheerfulness they usually held. "Ayame was happy," he replied, but was not satisfied till she knew more. She spoke up once again. "What happened? You usually tackle problems in front of you with a smile on your face. What's got you so upset? Is it the villagers again? I swear those bastards will get what's coming to them eventually." Another long pause before Naruto responded in trust. "My parents were alive, and I was abandoned," he replied, emotionally stunted. Ayame didn't respond for a while, unsure on how to comprehend the situation. She didn't know what to say, and clearly understood his reason for being depressed. She wouldn't even know how to react if that happened to her, on top of all the abuse the villagers pushed onto him. "Regardless," she responded. "Naruto, I can't begin to understand what you're going through on top of everything else, but to me you're one of the strongest people I know. No matter what, you always face your problems head on with a smile. You're cheerful and fun no matter what has happened, and to me that's what makes you different and special from the rest. Don't ever let your problems change you for the worse. Hate is a terrible emotion that will destroy you. I don't want that to ever happen to you." Naruto didn't respond at first till a small smile graced his face, and he began eating his bowl of ramen. He wasn't hungry at all, and all he really wanted right now was someone familiar to help him get through this mess. "Big sis, thank you." Ayame smiled at that, and began humming as she continued to clean the dishes. Naruto didn't eat much, but to make him feel better, Ayame and his father gave him the ramen in the house. Still, Naruto was unsure how to proceed. He thought over the pain, the abuse, and betrayal, and was at a loss on what to do next. He didn't want to stay in the village anymore, and he didn't owe the people his loyalty except for Ayame and her father. Irika was the only other person he came to care about, especially from his dying confession of caring for him like a brother. However, he was dead. killed before could truly make the connection. His Gigi or Sarutobi-sama had lied to him on something very important, and that destroyed his image of a grandfather in his eyes. Finally, he had no friends since everyone stayed away from him, or made fun of him. Even his rival Satsuki, who he challenged daily hoping to get stronger, wasn't entirely a friend, and at times joined in, but still being less pronounced than the rest. No one cared for him, and he doubted she or anyone else would miss him if he disappeared. After mulling over his thoughts, Naruto decided he had to leave the village. There was nothing here except the two in front of him, and Iam was right in a way. If he stayed here, he would likely change for the worst, and he didn't want to constantly be surrounded by horrible people. He decided it was best he found somewhere new to call home, where he was wanted, and could be of use. Somewhere he could start fresh without having a biased identity against him, as the demon of Konoha. The two people in front of him were the only people to say goodbye to. He knew they cared for him deeply, and hopefully would understand his intentions for leaving. It was going to be sad saying goodbye to them, possibly forever, but if he could pay them back for their love and support, he would. Naruto called both Iam and her father to focus on what he was going to say next. It was late, and getting dark with the thunderstorm raging overhead, yet he knew this was his only chance to leave and escape without being tracked. The people of Konoha would be far too busy preparing for the return of the Yondaime, and would be too preoccupied to notice his disappearance. If he didn't leave now, he would be monitored carefully. As his son, something he didn't want, so now was the only chance he had left. Naruto prepared himself to tell them his plan. I am, old man Tuchi, paused trying to come up with the right words to say to them. I have decided tonight I will be leaving Konoha. There was silence for a minute, accompanied by the occasional thunderclap in the background, and the pouring rain. Then, Naruto, where will you go? As bad as this place is, you at least have a roof over your head. Out there it's dangerous, bandits, killers, thieves, it's no place for a child. I am responded, shocked at the sudden development. Before Naruto could speak up, Tuchi spoke next, also surprised. As much as I can see where you're coming from, there is currently a thunderstorm overhead, and it's raining. What if you're caught? You would get into a lot of trouble, and I don't think Hokage-sama would let you out of his sight willingly. Tuchi finished trying to comprehend the ramifications of such an act. He understood completely that Naruto had a better shot outside of Konoha, but going now without a plan was extremely stupid and dangerous. Naruto responded with confidence and slight cheerfulness in his voice, most likely at the prospect of a new future and the fresh option available to him. I thought about it over and over. I owe these people nothing, and they don't deserve my respect. I am actually more prepared than you think. The rain will cover my scent and tracks, while the thunder would increase my stealth by blocking out the sound of my movements. I have little to carry, as I don't own much, and to top it off, I know a secret way out of Konoha. He paused dramatically before continuing. No one will notice me gone until it is too late. I am the demon brat after all, and no one would care. I am. And Tuchi continued to argue with Naruto, but in the end agreed with him that the only way he would have a shot at life was to find somewhere new to take it. With a heavy sigh, Naruto said his goodbyes and pulled out his wallet to pay for his meals. There's no need, my boy, Tuchi said. Consider it a gift. Also, I have something in the back I wanted to give to you for your birthday. I know it's early, but it's now or never. Give me a second to get it for you. Tuchi left to collect the items for Naruto to take on his journey. Iam went around the counter and gave Naruto a big long hug. We're really going to miss you. Don't ever forget about us. And if you're in any trouble, we'll always be here to support you. Naruto's eyes watered at the idea of leaving them behind. Sniff thanks Iam. You're the best big sister anyone can ask for. They continued to talk, spending what little time they had together till Tuchi came back with the items in hand. Naruto analyzed the items and was surprised with what he was carrying. He saw a large and expensive storage scroll designed to last and absorb impact, along with several ninja books and scrolls which included chakra theory, combat styles, and Naruto was surprised they were able to accumulate such material, let alone so much. He couldn't help but voice his confusion. Where did you get all of that? He asked, surprised at the items. These are presents from us, and what Iruka wanted to give to you for your upcoming birthday. He left it with us to mind, and presented it to you when the time was right, and called it a hunch, and I guess he was right. This has more use with you than anyone else. Use them wisely. He spoke while handing over the items. Here's some ryo, money or whatever, for the journey. Buy what you need on the way. And finally, always remember to live life to the fullest, and don't ever let it change who you are. Sniff thanks for everything. I swear I will take care of it. Thank you for everything. Naruto finished slightly crying at all they did for him, and the fond memories he shared with them. Now he couldn't make those memories anymore. It was time for him to go, so finally he said his goodbyes. 10 minutes later, Naruto traveled down to his shabby apartment in the rain with his new storage scroll securely tied on his back, and the books and jutsu scrolls sealed inside. He was still depressed over the events that transpired throughout the day with the return of his family, but he was now more accepting of the situation, and happy he got to spend his last few moments in Konoha with Ayame and Tucci. Now he was completely resolved to leave, but first he had to collect what supplies he could from his apartment, such as any clothes and food he could use for the journey. Naruto arrived at his apartment and noticed that all his belongings were outside. He wasn't happy with the landlord for being such an ass, but at least he left it outside instead of in the trash, as it would make his escape harder, smelling like garbage. Looking on the bright side and the potential for a new and bright future, he scavenged through his belongings, taking out what he needed, such as food, mainly ramen, blankets, matches, cooking pans, clothes, and more, and sealed them into his newly acquired storage scroll. For the rest of his stuff he left it there, since there was no need to bring it with him. He was going to travel first and see the world before settling down again. He analyzed some of the items he collected. He equipped what little ninja gear he presently had, such as dull, pre-owned kunai, and shuriken, while looking at the state of his clothing. From what he could tell, he would need to buy better clothes first, then proper equipment. It was risky, but he needed to stop by a ninja store and stock up on equipment. He had to do it early to avoid detection, so, as soon as he left Konoha, he made his way out to the port city of Taki. It was night time, and while the rain had died down, Naruto still made his way out of Konoha through an underground passage he found. It was flooded and muddy, but so far it was a success, as he was already far from Konoha and had avoided any detection so far. He made his way to Taki and found a boat willing to take him across the ocean. After all, what better way to stay under the radar than not to be on the radar at all? He doubted any ninja would look as far as across the ocean, so it was necessary to travel overseas. He had little money, but he was sure he could use his skill set and shadow clones to help out, especially against any pirates they came across. His only regret of Konoha was not telling Ayame and Tucci where he was going. He wanted to tell them, but even with all the trust he had for them, he was sure the Konoha shinobi would pry it out of them. Torture or not, after all, it only took one Yamanaka to do the job. It took 3 days of traveling at ninja speeds to make his way to the port city, and so far had been able to avoid detection from Konoha or Taki ninjas. He had slept little, and was constantly on guard against any ninjas, so he was heavily fatigued even with his regeneration. Still, he pressed on to his new dream. He was nearly there, and was about to start his new life. As Naruto entered the port city, he was able to buy supplies from local stores that sold to him at a fair price. Now he was fully stocked with food, ninja apparel, and civilian clothing, allowing him to better blend in. He threw away his old orange jumpsuit and equipped a new one, and stored any additional clothing he bought into his storage scroll. Currently, Naruto was looking around for any boat that was willing to take him across the seas to a new land. It took several hours till he found a ship willing to hire him aboard for a fee, which he happily accepted. Now he was ready to set off into a new land and a new adventure. It had been 3 days since Naruto left Konoha, and many changes were occurring internally and externally with the return of Yandame and his family. However, not everything was good, and for the family things were darker than ever. Flashback. It had already been 1 day since Naruto left Konoha, and no one had noticed his disappearance. The village, on the other hand, was abuzz with activity, with word having gotten out about the 4th Hokage's return, and the village celebrated in honor of their hero. Some had even celebrated further, looking for the demon brat to end its existence once and for all, or to capture him and give Yandame the opportunity to do so himself. As expected, the villagers were unsuccessful in finding him, but they didn't mind. Their hero was back and would protect them from any future threats. Little did they understand the full extent of what they thought and had done to poor Naruto. Minato and the family can be seen preparing for the official reclamation of the Hokage position in the Namake's estate. The family was busy, especially Naruto, who was getting used to the new faces of Konoha. Narumi and Naruto were worried for their brother, having not seen him since the storm yesterday, and they had hoped to spend time with him and to get to know him, but so far he hadn't shown up to greet them. It worried them and brought them down a little, since they wanted to be a family. Still, they didn't give up hope. They would see him after the ceremony, and they would finally be the family they were meant to be. There, however, was one thing of concern that caught Naruto's attention. There were often whispers of a demon brat in the background, with the villagers discreetly communicating about its coming end. Naruto didn't know what they meant, but she felt angry at those words. First day with Kushina and Minato. It was now midday. The sun was shining brightly in the sky, with the occasional cloud passing by. The ground was slightly wet and muddy, but was quickly drying by the change of weather. It was much different from yesterday, when thunderstorms rained in the sky, forcing the family to seek shelter at their estate without Naruto. They thought it was best that he thought things through before they confronted him again. After all, it was a lot to take in so suddenly. Sarutobi didn't say much about how he lived and what he had been through, but it was enough to shape the picture that things weren't well with Naruto. It would only be later today that they fully understood the horrid details of Naruto's life. The welcoming ceremony took place at the Hokage Tower with the Namikaze family standing side by side except for Narumi, who was being held by Kushina. Minato and Kushina looked over at the vast crowd, seeing their happy and cheerful faces, and looked angry and disappointed. Both had spent some time with Sarutobi before the ceremony, in which he took the opportunity to delve deeper in detail of Naruto's life. From there they knew things hadn't gone the way they had hoped, with Jiraiya and Tsunade having left Naruto to the whims of the village. Whims that was clearly detrimental to his growth and psyche. When Kushina and Minato heard what was going on with Naruto, they didn't believe Sarutobi at first. That was until they read his ninja report, medical files, and history that were handed to them to read. They didn't have much time to read the large folders before the ceremony, but the first few pages told them everything they needed to know. They told the story of an abused and neglected child left to the wolves of the village, and it made them sick. And to top it off, they had begun noticing the whispers of the villagers saying to find the demon brat for them to finish it off. To ensure that didn't happen, Minato had ordered the ANBU to watch the villagers and ensure nothing happened to Naruto, or there would be severe ramifications. Kushina was feeling the worst of the two, since she had lived her life as the previous Jinchuriki to the nine-tailed fox and understood how difficult such a burden was. Yet she had left her very own son to go through that pain 1,000 times worse. She couldn't call herself his mother with all she had put him through, and wished she had thought differently at the time of their separation. Truly, they had made a mistake in entrusting Naruto's care to these people. They only hoped they could explain to Naruto the circumstances around their decision, and in time he would forgive them of their slights, regardless of how unlikely that would be. It was time for the ceremony, and Minato had expressed his disappointment and fury at the villagers for what they did to his own flesh and blood. A lot of the villagers were confused on that matter, but he quickly cleared that up with the shocking revelation of Naruto being his son. Immediately most of the villagers and shinobi knew they were in trouble. Shortly after the ceremony, Minato and Kushina continued to look over the large records of Naruto's life. They wanted to find him and apologize, but they couldn't go in blind again. Who knows what kind of damage they would cause if they joked about new revelations to him again, or brought up something that happened. They spent hours looking over the records, delving deeper into his life, and so far it painted a terrible picture. The abuse, neglect, torture, suffering, pain, mistrust, and worst of all, loss. They found out in greater detail that Naruto had lived a terrible life, being kicked out of the orphanage at 6 constant homeless periods, short-term accommodation that changed randomly, trashed apartments, overpriced necessities, beatings, abuse, poor academic records, long medical files, and much more in his 9-year life in Konoha. To top it off, he only found out recently of him being a Jinchuriki from a traitor no less, who mocked him while killing someone precious to him. Frankly, they were surprised he was still sane by all he's been through. But even then they grew concerned. After all, they were unsure how he would react to yesterday's revelation. They needed to talk to Naruto as soon as possible and help him through the pain. The thought of their child going through that alone scared them. With all bad records out of the way, they couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Through his suffering, Naruto had made do with what he had, shown resourcefulness, as well as maintaining a cheery attitude to life, whether it was a mask or not. That, coupled with him maintaining sanity through all the pain, showed strong mental fortitude. Naruto had also continually demonstrated determination and perseverance by working towards his dream of becoming Hokage, regardless of the bias and hindrances pushing against him. He wasn't strong, and was considered the weakest in the class, but with his attitude, along with him being their son, they were sure with the right push he would become strong, and a future beacon for the next generation of the Will of Fire. Little did they know it was already too little too late. With Ayame and Tochi, both of Naruto's precious people, were unable to attend the welcoming ceremony for the return of the Hokage, but that didn't mean they didn't know what was happening. The gossip channel was running rampant, and working in a ramen stand allowed them to find out the situation. It came out as a surprise that the parents that had abandoned Naruto's to his deplorable fate were Minato and Kushina Namikaze. Then again, his similarity to Minato was noticeable with his blonde hair and blue eyes, and looking back they had to stop themselves from face-palming from the obvious. Next they found out that Naruto had a twin sister and a younger 3-year-old sister. They couldn't help but think how horrible the meeting must have been, with the supposed family having lived happily together in a life of luxury, while he got the shorter end of the stick, suffering throughout his life. It made them angry that their carelessness had caused him so much pain. Even now they continued to support his decision to leave. Who knows what would have happened if he stayed? There was simply too much pressure working against him, and it wouldn't have been long till he snapped. It was obvious that eventually they would notice Naruto was missing, and would go seeking answers. They were close to Naruto, and almost everyone knew it, so they were the likely suspects of his whereabouts. Fortunately for them, they didn't know where he was specifically, and could bypass basic shinobi interrogation tactics since they just simply didn't know where he went. Still, they would do what they could to buy him time to escape from the clutches of Konoha, so if the family ever came around to the store for questions they would just counter by saying they don't know. After all, they didn't have the right, having caused so much suffering. Besides, Naruto was better off without them since he didn't owe them anything while they owed him everything. Ayame stopped her line of thought and looked up to the clear blue sky. Naruto, I hope you're happy wherever you are. Day 2. As much as Minato and Kushina wanted to spend time with Naruto to reconnect, they were simply too busy yesterday with council meetings and rebuilding their position in Konoha. That, coupled with the ceremony and looking through Naruto's records, had taken far too much time out of the day, and they simply didn't want to disturb him when it was already late, so they decided to put off the family reunion till the next day. Today, the family had decided they would try what they could to reconnect with Naruto despite the likelihood of failure, since they owed him so much, and they had no idea where to start building the bridge. Naruto herself had only recently learned what had transpired in her twin's life, and was disgusted with the village, her parents, and most of all herself. Had she been more persistent in her approach to return to Konoha, much of her brother's suffering could have been avoided. Minato and Kushina at first tried to pin the blame on the missing godparents being Jiraiya and Tsunade. However, Naruto's reply was it was as much their fault for trusting people that weren't family to Naruto's care, and they should have kept track on what was happening to their son instead of blindly trusting others with their own child. The family knew they deserved nothing but hatred from the boy, but they would do whatever it took to get Naruto in their lives. Naruto and the family went to extra lengths to prepare for the apology, bringing with them a great number of jutsu scrolls, books, necessities, and even large amounts of Ryo to at least satiate the pain they had exposed him to. It wasn't much in comparison to the large records of suffering he had endured, but it was a start. The family, along with little Narumi, left the Namikaze estate with their apology presents sealed into a storage scroll, and began making their way to Naruto's last known apartment. On the way, they were greeted by many past friends and civilians who either wanted to say hello or ask for forgiveness for what they have done, or what they didn't do. The family was too focused to care, and only replied with glares and disgusted looks. After all, it wasn't them they should be apologizing to. Most of the shinobi, civilians, and old friends flinched at their reply, understanding clearly how much they messed up. Most hoped that over time they would attain some level of forgiveness. The family arrived outside the known apartment after walking to the third story, and noticed belongings and furniture of various kinds scattered outside the apartment's entrance. Early spring cleaning was what the family thought, simultaneously thinking that Naruto was replacing rundown furniture. After all, who would be stupid enough to evict him when word had spread that he was Yandame's son? Surely no one was that stupid, right? Minato knocked on the door, and the family waited for a response. No response. There were no signs of Naruto registering the knock on the other side. Still they waited. Naruto decided to check if the front door was open, only to find it locked. Did Naruto leave early? The family collectively thought, unsure how to proceed. Still they decided to wait a while, hoping he would return soon and meet up with them. 30 minutes later. Nothing had happened for 30 minutes, and the family was patiently waiting for Naruto's return. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, "What are you people doing? If you want to beat the demon brat, I'm sorry to say I evicted him 2 days ago. Couldn't pay the special demon rent, you know." The now identified fat landlord spoke with pride in his voice, likely from causing the demon the suffering he deserved. All three members clenched their fists except Narumi, who was confused at what was going on. It was clear to them that the landlord was outside the gossip loop, wasn't present at the return of the Yandame ceremony, nor recognized the Yandame himself standing in front of him. "Wait, 2 days ago?" was the simultaneous response by Naruto, Minato, and Kushina. 2 days ago, when they had just arrived and talked to Naruto. If he wasn't living here, then where had he been living? That scared them. After all, if he was evicted, then all the stuff outside were his belongings, and not garbage. That meant he hadn't been able to move them to a new home, as transporting equipment for ninja was easy. It was also noticeable that some necessities were missing, such as blankets, pillows, and food. Did that mean Naruto was living outside? Was he homeless again? Was he sleeping in the rain? The landlord continued in a cheery and upbeat voice, still unable to comprehend the situation. "Yeah, that demon got what he deserved. Sucks for him. I doubt anyone would take that spawn, and after I evicted him that stormy night, probably was sleeping in the trash can where he belongs, he did dash." The landlord was unable to finish, as Kushina appeared in a flash in front of him with raging eyes and fist cocked back. Then in a split second, Chakra punched him as hard as she could. Before the rest of the family could react to his words, the landlord was already sent flying, breaking down the wooden railing on the opposite end and crashing to the street below. Kushina, however, wasn't done yet, and sunshine to him, and proceeded to bash the living crap out of the fool till he was a bleeding, bruised mess. To emphasize her hate of the man, she took out a kunai with the intent to end him, only to have her arm stopped by Minato. "Dear, I know how you feel, but we can't kill him. As Hokage, I have to keep these villagers alive, he all but spat the word villagers. He didn't want to protect them, as much as he did in the past with what they had done to his own son. Instead, he had to do it, as part of his duty. Kushina glared at Minato, but understood where he was coming from, so she put the kunai down, and left the man in a pool of his own blood. Minato, however, just called the ANBU to send him to the hospital, and when he had recovered enough to be sent straight to Ibiki for torture and interrogation. Now the family had another problem to deal with. Where was Naruto? Not wasting any time, the family worked on finding any leads to his location. Narumi had to be returned to the Namake's estate with a hired babysitter, and ANBU, as guards watching over, while the rest of the family worked on locating Naruto and finding any leads as to where he was. Even the shinobi and ANBU were sent around Konoha and its training grounds to investigate. Kushina and Naruto had bypassed the search by first making their way to Ichiraku's ramen, knowing that Naruto's precious people worked there. They were however disappointed when they replied they hadn't seen him all day or knew where he was. Kushina and Naruto noticed they were hiding something, but didn't delve deeper into it, and continued to look elsewhere for Naruto. It was now night, and there was no sign of Naruto. It was concluded that he had left the village, and ANBU agents were sent out to retrieve him. However, that was a fool's task, with the storm having covered his tracks, and him having over a day's head start. The conclusion had come about when Kushina and Naruto ended up returning to the ramen stand with Minato, stating they were hiding something about Naruto. From there, it didn't take long to pry out the information from Ayame and Tuchi due to the threat of working against the village and the consequences. Sure, the two workers didn't know where Naruto had gone, but they at least knew he had left during the storm to take full advantage of the track covering potential, as well as the confusion around Minato's return. Immediately, Minato had tasked the ANBU to spread out and search Fire Country and any allied countries for his estranged son, as Minato could have had the pair sent to prison for working against Konoha and not notifying them earlier, or even stopping Naruto. But no matter what way he saw it, they weren't at fault and were looking out for him. Besides, if he did send them to prison, it would only make the relationship worse with Naruto, and he would never forgive them then. Still, he hoped he would be found, captured, and returned, in which they can finally work to make things right. Day 3. It was the third day of the return of the Namikes, and the shinobi and ANBU outside Konoha were on high alert for any signs of Naruto. Kushina wanted to join them, but Minato convinced her to stay since she needed to take care of Narumi, and the ninja outside were working overtime to look for him, especially Sarutobi, who also joined in the search. With him searching for Naruto, it would only be a matter of time till he is found. After all, he was the previous Hokage. Her interference would just change very little in the search for Naruto. Today was also the day that Naruto would enter the Ninja Academy for the first time. Academy had been postponed due to recent events, however it was set to start up once again, and she was excited to enter, but also sad at going to a major place of Naruto's suffering. She really wanted to see Naruto again, apologize to him, and build what relationship she could with her brother. However, that was becoming less and less likely with each passing day he had left Konoha. Naruto was sorry and depressed over the loss of her brother, but that wouldn't keep her down, as she was more determined than ever to bring her Nai-san back and make things right. It was her goal, no dream, to complete the family, as it should be. To do that, she needed to get stronger, she needed to train and study. No more mistakes. Everything would be complete once Nai-san was returned. Naruto prepared herself for the academy. She was already strong, having trained with her parents extensively, and would capitalize on what she already knew. She needed to pass the academy as soon as possible and begin her search for her brother and bring him back, whether he wanted to or not. Naruto arrived at the academy and proceeded to classroom 302, her brother's classroom. She entered the room and looked around, analyzing the different children that were likely to be her teammates. So far, there were only 8 others in the room that she saw potential in. She didn't know their names, but in time that was likely to change. Maybe she would even have a rival to top of her friendships. Naruto looked around for a free seat and noticed a female with black hair, onyx eyes, a slim figure, and wearing a purple ninja kimono staring out the window, while on her right were 2 free seats. Seeing no harm in taking one, Naruto made her way to the free middle seat, moving up the stairs and eventually sitting down. The girl hadn't noticed her yet, so she decided to initiate the conversation. "Hi, I'm Naruto Namikaze. Mind if I sit here?" She was curious about the girl. The female replied, "Actually, yeah, I do. Could you scurry across one? Naruto usually sits there, and he should be coming in soon, although I doubt he'd want to sit next to you." Naruto gulped. Guess this girl was a friend of Naruto's, or at least an acquaintance with him, and knew about his complicated situation. Yet she wasn't aware that Naruto was actually missing. Guess it was her duty to inform her. About that, well, you see, Naruto kinda left the village," she responded, unsure on how to best convey the situation. This immediately got the attention of the girl, as she spun around and looked at her seriously. What? Yeah, my brother kind of left, but don't you worry. As soon as I graduate, I'll drag him back and make things right. Naruko replied, upbeat and confident in her abilities and dreams. The female scoffed, yeah right. You are likely the people that drove him away in the first place. Seriously, just rocking up randomly right after someone close to Naruto was killed, and saying you're his family that abandoned him. It's no wonder why he left. Naruto flinched at the jab, and then got angry. Who the hell are you to say such things? Captain Obvious. Figures a weak and a mentally challenged girl like you wouldn't know much about me. I'm the last Uchiha, Satsuki Uchiha, and the prodigy of the clan. She replied smugly to Naruto, which only seemed to infuriate her further. Yeah, the clan of 2 people while the rest was wiped out by your older brother. What's Naruto to you anyway? I don't think you're Naruto's friend, or he would have told you he was leaving like he did with Ayame and Tsuchi, she replied with a smug smirk of her own. The newly identified Satsuki blushed red in anger and embarrassment, and stood up in defiance. Naruto stood up to match her, and they both stared down at one another. It was the start of a beautiful friendship. Satsuki at the end of the day. Satsuki didn't pay much attention in class, and thought over the recent developments in Konoha, and her interaction with Naruto. She had no real friends, and was often lonely with Naruto being her only light, challenging her every day to enforce the point that he was her rival, and would one day beat her. Satsuki thought it was funny at first, and daily beat him to the ground to prove her superiority, yet he stood back up with fire and determination in his eyes, and continued to challenge her. When she asked why, his simple reply was she was strong, and he wanted to be strong as well, and if he managed to beat her it would mean that he got stronger, and a step closer to his dream of being Hokage. She was confused at first, but thought over what he said over time, and eventually understood when she saw him training alone. He was an orphan back then, and survived alone. He was just determined to prove himself, to show he was somebody, and she admired that attitude of his. Sure, he was weak, but with recent revelations it was completely understandable, being hated by everyone with all the bias aimed towards him. It was a surprise to her that he remained sane through all that suffering. She had hoped to see him in the academy today, to talk to him, and to actually become friends, and not just rivals. However, all for naught, as she found out he left to start a new life elsewhere. Satsuki couldn't blame him. She had noticed his treatment with the occasional whisper of demon brat directed to him. She only found out what it had meant, and truthfully it just made her respect for him grow. He persevered through the hardship and pain, all with the desire to get stronger in order to attain respect from fellow peers and villagers, even when they didn't deserve it. That's what always made him unique and different from the rest, and in her eyes someone capable. It was only recent when things had begun to change. On top of the abuse, Sairaka, their previous teacher, had been killed, and from what she heard from Mizuki, another teacher who turned traitor, Naruto and Iraka were not entirely close at the time, but he did watch over Naruto, and as such it came to no surprise that Naruto was depressed over his death. If that was all, things would have rolled over in time, but it wasn't the end of the week. Instead, another problem shows up. The Namikaze family. For Naruto to suddenly find out that his family was alive all along, living happily together, seemed to have pushed him over the edge, and he left. Satsuki sighed. She wished he could have at least talked to him about it, but she guessed all the times she had purposely mocked him for his weakness had a negative effect on his view of her. She didn't do it out of hate, rather she did it because she cared, and her words continued to drive him to become stronger. Still, he was gone, and there was nothing she could do about it while she stayed in Konoha. She wished she could at least have talked to him one more time to become an official friend to him, but it was too late. No, it wasn't too late. She would find him and tell him what she thought of him. She will make things right. With Naruto. Day 4. Naruto had set out with the sailors in the trading boat to a continent overseas, and towards a place called the Empire. Naruto didn't know much about the place, and only picked up tidbits of information from what the sailors told him. It was west of the Elemental Nations, and just like the Elemental Nations was a large continent with the dominant power being the Empire. It was a long sail to reach their destination, and they didn't know much about the area, not having delved too deep within, but they were able to collect information from rumors of traders at port. Apparently the Elemental Nations have only just discovered their existence about a year ago, and have started small-scale trade with the locals. From what the sailors had gathered, on the other side the empire was said to have been around for 1,000 years, and boasted numerous resources and land. At the founding, the empire was said to have limitless resources, and the best minds of the world, with the emperor having absolute authority, but was now going through decline due to corruption, economic recession, eroding public order, rampant poverty, and dissatisfaction with the people. Still, with how big the empire was said to be, and a new identity he had, he was sure he would be able to make a fresh start there. One particular piece of information that he found interesting was the rumors of danger beasts or risk species that roamed the continent that were extremely hostile to humans, attacking them if they wander into their territory. Naruto had wondered if these danger beasts were like summoned creatures, and if he could make a contract with one after all his combat repertoire was severely lacking not having completed the academy. He supposed his first order of business would be training and attaining strength, and with groups hunting down dangerous beasts he supposed he could join in and make some money, get to know strong people while also completing some training. Things were finally looking up for Naruto, until suddenly, boom, a whizzing sound was heard from the distance, and Naruto spun around to the direction of the noise to see a ship in the distance. What was going on? He thought to himself until the situation was clarified by one word and one scream. Pirates! After a week of sailing, Naruto had finally arrived at a port town south of the empire. Once he disembarked and said his goodbyes to the sailors, as well as his new friends, Naruto walked down the harbor side taking note of the city surroundings. Immediately he noticed the similarities and differences in the architecture of the city, as buildings bore similarities to elemental nation design, particularly that of Konoha, but had a more rugged and modern feel to them with the prioritization of cement and bricks rather than wood. Naruto thought it was unique and extravagant in its own way, and grew more excited to see what the capital was like. Once he began traveling around and got to know the empire first. He had heard many great things about the empire from its navy, particularly from Wave and his master, and was excited to see as much of it as he could, from the ports, to the cities, to the wild wilderness, and to the mountains. It was so different to that of Konoha, and this time he could freely explore without interruptions from ninja hunting him. Naruto was free. He felt free. No more abusive villagers to deal with, and no more lies piling on behind his back. He could do what he wanted, be what he wanted, and find actual friends that would care about him. Just thinking about what lay ahead made him giddy with excitement. As Naruto traveled down the streets, he thought back to Wave, his master, and the navy, and couldn't help but wonder what lay in store for him. Flashback. Pirates! One of the deck men shouted. Pirates were a constant danger in the seas, and it appears Naruto wasn't lucky enough to avoid them. It was clear what was going to happen, so without a second thought Naruto rushed in to help defend the ship by creating 20 clones to clear the deck for the upcoming fight, and to gather weapons for the sailors. Additional clones were also tasked to man the cannons, and help load them with heavy metal balls for the initial phase of naval combat. It was a struggle at first, as gunpowder and projectile weaponry wasn't common in the elemental nation, nor were they widespread due to them having little effect against ninjas and their mobility in combat, resulting in Naruto's lack of practical knowledge. However, guns and cannons eventually found greater use elsewhere, particularly in boats due to the lack of shinobi personnel to fight and defend against, other than in Kiri, as well as the lack of mobility people held when sailing. As such, gunpowder and cannons found more use with civilians, and the naval trade being a common sight at the ports. At first the crew were momentarily shocked at Naruto's ability, however quickly assumed he was a shinobi, or at the very least a shinobi in training, and their spirits were lifted. As a result, they began working double time to ensure they weren't shown up by a kid, shinobi or not. Naruto looked up, and noticed more ships coming in, and counted 3 in total. They weren't all firing, rather only one ship seemed to be, as it tried to clear the deck of its defenders. It was clear what they were planning, as the pirates continued their approach. They want the ship in one piece, Naruto thought naturally. They were pirates after all, and regardless if they were after the ship itself, he knew they would be interested in whatever contents they were currently carrying. It didn't matter to Naruto either way, and simply continued loading the cannons along with his clones, and fired back whenever they could. So far little damage was being done to the pirates, and there were simply too many of them, so he quickly assumed the fight could only be won through hand-to-hand combat. As such, he prepared himself. Naruto already had the advantage, and he knew it. A couple hundred clones can be summoned to kill and cause havoc, and what's more, the sooner a ship came close the more room he had to summon clones. It was the perfect ambush, and he doubted any of the pirates would be prepared for a fight where they would be outnumbered and outmaneuvered. The ships were close now. Some of the pirates threw grappling hooks onto the trade boat, but that did nothing to deter Naruto. Rather, it excited him. He was going to board a pirate ship, spam clones, and beat the crap out of them. He had a lot of pent-up frustration that needed an outlet. So far the battle had been going well in Naruto's favor. However, things quickly changed when the capital pirate ship made its move towards them. Clearly the lead captain was on that ship, after all it was the biggest and most heavily fortified ship out of the pirates. Deciding to use the size of the ship to his advantage, the original Naruto procured a grappling hook from the pirate ship and swung it up to the capital ship and secured it. Then he ran up with vigor while preparing his hand signs for more shadow clones. Immediately clones began popping up all around the ship, and began engaging whatever pirates they could find. And so far the combat was easy. They were all civilian level, hence being easy prey for a warrior of his caliber, regardless of how weak he currently was in comparison to other shinobi. Naruto suddenly dodged to the side, as a spear was sent flying right past his face. The origin of the spear was from a large bulky man rippling with muscles, and had a large mustache on his face. "Good dodge, kid," he cockily smirked, as Naruto's instincts ran wild again, forcing him to dodge. Surprisingly, when he looked back, he noticed the spear coming for him yet again. This time there wasn't a person throwing it. It was as if it had a mind of its own, and acted like a boomerang. "Not bad." The man smirked again, clearly amused at his opponent. "That's one amazing thing you've got. The ability to create physical copies of yourself. Not a bad catch." "Taigu? What's that?" Naruto was confused. Sure, he had chakra, but he never heard it being referred to as before. Is it their version of chakra? Regardless, Naruto had to beat this guy. As much as he preferred not to engage in a fight, he needed to end the pirates and ensure the crew survived, or else he'd be stuck in the middle of the ocean with no direction to go, and that's if he survived after losing. Deciding not to give any information away, Naruto created more clones and had them attack the bulky person with the weird mustache. As expected, his attacks proved fruitless with his lack of taijutsu style against a more skilled and experienced opponent. The only thing he had advantage over the man was numbers and stamina. The man expertly used his spear to destroy the clones, spinning around as if he were some ballerina. "Your fighting style sucks, kid. How about you leave those merchants and join my crew? I'm sure you'll be an excellent addition after some training. We have money, slaves, women. I'm sure you'll know what decision to take since you'll die otherwise," the bulky mustache man said cockily yet again. Naruto was appalled at what he had heard towards the end. These people actually took slaves and actively tortured them, having been found out by the clones sent into the interior of the ship. It appears there was another useful aspect of the clones he had just found out: the accumulation of knowledge the clones see when dispelled. Naruto abhorred slavery and torture, as it was tantamount to aspects of his old life. As such, he was even firmer in opposing the newly identified captain. Attacking again over and over using his clones and superior stamina, it took 30 minutes before he was able to overwhelm the captain and eventually kill him with a kunai to the heart. This, however, was a shallow victory in Naruto's eyes, and it was a clear indicator that he had to improve his combat skills to deal with the tougher opponents. It would be one of the primary focuses he would have to deal with as soon as he secured accommodation, a steady supply of money, and food. Another 30 minutes later, the sailors of the merchant ship began securing the deck and releasing the prisoners, while also tying up or executing the pirates/slave traders. Eventually another ship entered the arena, but this time it wasn't another pirate ship. It is simply far too elaborately designed. Naruto heard one of the crewmen shout, "It's the Empire's navy." Clearly the ship itself was a patrol ship securing the waters for the Empire, but its presence alone brought relief to Naruto and the crew. It was sort of a letdown though that the navy showed up just after the battle. Then again, it was better than them not showing up at all. It was several hours later, after having dealt with the pirates and the slaves, that custody was transferred over to the navy. Naruto in that time had managed to make a new friend while familiarizing himself with the Empire. He met a young kid named Wave who was just above his age, training aboard the vessel alongside his master/teacher. I'm going to just refer to him as Wave's master, as I know nothing about him. His dream was to join the navy and fight for the Empire, but it was clear that it was a loose dream and acted more of a set goal than a lifetime achievement. Still, Naruto found the kid fun to talk to, and officially Wave was his first friend. From his talks with Wave, Naruto was able to learn more about the Empire, the people that inhabited it, the geography, the countries that surround it, and the dangers it faces. He learned that there were powerful fighters, mainly referred to as generals, that protected the Empire, and the many different kinds of people he was likely to meet. Sometimes Wave gave him warnings of bad people to watch out for, but Naruto, being Naruto with his vast experiences with bad people, knew he could handle whatever they threw his way. One significant piece of information Naruto learned from Wave was that the people didn't have access to chakra. Rather, they relied on normal combat prowess, special biological gifts, and technology to fight. One example was the development and standard issue of guns to soldiers, these days being a common sight in the Empire's military. Wave mentioned that guns have been developed and specialized over time, having come a long way in manufacturing with great velocity, reload time, and power behind each flying bullet. To them, it was an extremely effective way to combat enemies of the Empire. However, the downside was it was less effective against the more powerful and experienced foes. As such, it is mainly used to deal with a more common and weaker form of enemies encountered. An additional product of their technology was the development of Taiga. Although no longer in production, he learned that these items were specialized weapons with certain effects, allowing the user to do abnormal feats of nature similar to bloodlines of chakra users. He learned that they were made from danger beasts of various kinds, similar to summons, which also had distinct abilities, as their biological parts were eventually used to make the taiga, copying the beast's effects. The weapon over time then chooses its master, having a form of sentience over its user, usually having a requirement that they must fulfill. The only downside was it was rare to find, only having 48 in existence, most already being in use, and others lost in time. Still, it was an interesting prospect, and Naruto now wanted to attain A to become stronger. He finally understood what the pirate captain was drawing on during their fight, and why he was stronger than the normal pirate. After the navy secured the slaves, the pirates, and their ships, they proceeded to leave, but not before giving a recommendation to Naruto to join the empire. Of course, Naruto refused, saying he wanted to explore first, so bidding them goodbye, Naruto and the crew of the ship continued to sail towards a port city of the empire, one of them more eager to start his new life. Flashback end. Back to the present. Naruto pushed on into the city, giddy in each step he took. He looked around, inspecting the city surroundings while making his way inward. The further he traveled, the more he noticed the diversity of the people. Everywhere he looked, strangers walked by in all shapes and sizes. Some wore basic ragged clothing while others had royal and business-oriented clothing he had never seen before. The fashion in the empire was entirely new to him, and while there was great diversity in Konoha, it held no match to the diversity he saw here. Naruto's stomach grumbled in hunger, and he realized that he had yet to eat. Deciding he had nothing to lose, he made his way to the smell of cooking meat. Naruto eventually found himself in front of a store vendor who was cooking meat over a grill. Naruto's mouth watered in anticipation, but realized he had no money to pay for food. He needed to find cash and work, and stealing would prove disastrous long term, especially when he was somewhere new and didn't want to attract attention to himself just yet. Besides, this was his fresh start, and it would be pointless sullying it with stealing. He did it to survive. It didn't define who he was as an individual. Also, he didn't want to have to deal with his so-called family looking for him while he was weak, eventually creating more problems for him, leading to his capture. And that's if those bastards end up looking for him. As such, for the time being, he had to avoid attention. Naruto didn't know where to start looking for jobs, and being curious about the new scenery ended up playing off his feelings of hunger, and instead focused on exploring the different shops, libraries, and cafes he could find. As he walked down the street, he noticed people sent him strange looks, some lustful, and others confused. It was definitely a step up from the hateful and disgusted looks Konoha citizens sent his way. It was evident Naruto was a foreigner, with his looks being extremely exotic, with little to no people having sun-kissed blonde hair, deep sky blue eyes, and whisker marks on their cheeks. As such, regardless of his efforts to remain conspicuous, Naruto still received a large amount of attention. This exotic look, however, worked not only to get the occasional attention from glances, but also to attain attention from the more shady type of people. What Naruto didn't know was the city and all of the empire had a much darker side. Sure, he heard the sailors and waves say a few things about murders and kidnappings happening all around. He just didn't know how serious it was, its extent, and how deeply rooted it was in society. As Naruto passed an alleyway, a group of thugs jumped him, hoping to drag him in and take advantage of what they could get by either selling him to some rich noble or having an extra pair of hands to do slave labor. Unfortunately for them, they didn't know who he was or what they were messing with, and had to deal with the awesomeness that was Naruto Uzumaki. The thugs were weak and easy for Naruto. A couple of clones, and some below-the-belt punches, and they were out for the count. Sure, his taijutsu could use some improvement, but he was a ninja, or at the very least a civilian that had undergone some ninja training and survived harsh life conditions. Once Naruto had knocked the thugs out, he ignored them in favor of returning to his search for work and accommodation. For the moment, it looks like he would have to sleep on the streets, as he simply couldn't just break into an apartment to sleep, and he didn't have any money with him, only Rio that was not exchangeable yet. There may be accommodation for lost children like him, but he was not willing to change it after the last time he took that path, only to end up beaten for every inch of his life. Besides, he had experience living on the streets, and it wasn't as bad as people made it out to be. Eventually, Naruto came across an information board. Although he couldn't read the language completely, the use of shadow clones and learning aboard the ship helped immensely. He could tell the board had some jobs on it, and could make out some of the requirements of being a servant or maid, or working in a cafe, as a chef or waiter, but he knew those weren't the jobs for him. He wasn't even sure he could perform such work, and would end up being a waste of time. He wanted a job where he could have action with more physical requirements to improve his strength, like a shinobi. Looking further, he noticed there was one job on the board that was interesting, and it had to do with dangerous beast hunting. It was interesting, as he would not only gain money from finding and killing dangerous beasts, but he would also gain battle experience on top of his planned training. It was the best way to improve quickly, other than joining through the military. He simply wasn't ready to commit himself to anything just yet. Interested, Naruto took the flyer and walked towards a specified hunting agency for more information. He had a future to start. Time skip. 3 years summary. Naruto's training, traveling, and hunting in the vastness of the empire went on for the betterment of 2 years, allowing him to accumulate knowledge, improve his combat capability, and increase his ninjutsu reservoir. The scrolls I am and Tucci left him were a great help with its various combat styles, as he utilized and adapted whatever he could find, such as various chakra exercises and ninjutsu, to propel his strength further. In this time, Naruto had enjoyed exploring the vastness of the empire. Sure, it was huge, and he had barely covered anything, but that did nothing to deter his excitement every time he looked at the landscape. So far, he had only covered a small portion of the south area of the empire, being sure to keep to the maps. As he explored, he came across different towns and cities along the shores or in the countryside that were populated by various kinds of people. Most people kept to their own business, but as he walked, he noticed the common sight of beggars and snobbish people harassing them. Sometimes he would interfere, other times he didn't, and each time he did, he would get in some type of trouble and end up having to run away. He remembered the first time he did so, only to find out he messed with a government official. He wasn't willing to risk becoming a target of any sort again. As he explored further into the empire, it was becoming more obvious that there was something amiss. He could openly see corruption on the street, whether through money, drugs, or trafficking, and it truly disgusted him. Something was clearly wrong. Naruto had also come to understand that there was a rise in violent behavior and an increase in rebellious activity, and what was worse was that he bore witness to the effects rebellion had on the empire, and the brutality that followed. As a result, flashback. Naruto walked down a common road on his way to another city, but so far he had yet to see anyone passing by on the road. Considering there was a large town up ahead, it was confusing. As he walked closer to the next town, the smell of ash, blood, and rotting corpses began to permeate through the air, getting stronger with each step he took. This concerned him, and he looked up into the sky, noticing the black smoke rising in the distance. Concluding something was wrong, Naruto rushed onwards to the town. As Naruto passed a large hill, he was greeted to the sight of the town burning, with most of the riverbed frozen. He looked further and noticed military personnel slaughtering, torturing, and raping the civilians. As he looked on, he could feel the agony of the people, and without thinking rushed in to stop the atrocity. He didn't get far, however, as he encountered a female, the military commander he assumed from the official getup of her uniform. She was young, somewhere in her teenage years, with long blue hair stretching below her hips, with an official military commander hat on her head. Her military uniform consisted of a white, one-piece female military dress with the skirt ending halfway up her knees, and outlined with black leather along various parts. In addition to the uniform, she had leather arm holders covering most of her arms, and thick white leg holders also outlined with black leather, giving her a sadistic feel. This is SD's, but Naruto just doesn't know who she is yet. Analyzing deeper, he could see she was equipped with a very long rapier, and noticed most of her cleavage showing with a weird tattoo in the middle. Overall, in Naruto's eyes, she was a beautiful sight that managed to deter him from his initial charge. He could tell she was strong just by looking at her, with power, confidence, and authority rolling off her in spades. It had Naruto stop and think for a second. Still behind her, he could see the agony people were being subjected to. It was far worse than anything he'd seen or faced, and it disgusted him. Focusing back on what was happening, he rushed off, trying to bypass the woman, however couldn't do so, as she blocked his path with phenomenal speed while outstretching her rapier in a challenging motion at Naruto. She had a smirk on her face, as no words were exchanged between the two. Naruto, knowing what the military was doing, continued to try and try again to bypass the woman, only to fail over and over again. Looking at her, he could tell she was just playing with him, with the smirk evident on her face. Annoyed and unfocused, Naruto ignored his base instincts to run and live another day, and instead engaged the female in combat, creating clones and using various techniques, including crude explosive tags and paper bombs. This did surprise the female momentarily, but like every professional soldier, she easily adapted to whatever surprises Naruto threw at her by dodging or using her sword to deflect each attack he sent. She even managed to counter him when he was using Kurama's chakra, turning him feral and powerful. As the battle continued and escalated with him and the female beginning to destroy the road and trees surrounding it, became more apparent to Naruto that the female was just playing with him, as if he was some sort of game to her. It was clear he was outmatched, as she had yet to show any moves of her own, or even attack for that matter. Each time he attacked the female, she was becoming more and more sadistic, with the growing grin on her face. Suddenly, without warning, she went on the offensive, quickly appearing behind Naruto in a burst of speed and attacking with her rapier. Again, it was clear she wasn't taking him seriously, yet he still struggled to dodge, barely avoiding her slashes. Eventually, Naruto began to accumulate cuts and bruises from her attacks, and although they would easily heal over time, he was growing tired every passing second. As he looked around, he began to notice more and more soldiers piling up surrounding him, and the female. It was over. He knew he shouldn't have acted out, especially against the military. Yet regardless, he could do nothing. He was clearly beaten and surrounded. Not willing to change it, Naruto pulled out several smoke bombs to create a smoke screen, and created as many clones as he could before leaping out and running in several directions. Most clones were shot down instantly, but for some reason he could tell they weren't killing shots, rather more aimed to suppress his escape. Unfortunately for them, and lucky for him, he managed to get away, having to run several hours at top speed. It was clear the Empire had powerful fighters, and he needed more skill to combat them. He needed better ninjutsu and a sword. Flashback end. Fortunately for Naruto, no wanted posters had shown up, and he continued his work as a danger beast hunter, reporting, discovering, killing, and trading any danger beast he could find for money. He had a large portion of his time fighting and hunting for experience, as he explored the lands, discovering many natural and man-made wonders on his way, as well as the many horrors of reality that followed. He underwent training when he could use the scrolls to learn and improve his combat reservoir and survival skills. He started on, as it possessed many maneuvers in combat, and outside, such as for storage, gravity-based seals, and ambush seals. It appears that Uzumaki were naturals in creating and maintaining seals, as he found it easy to understand. As such, it didn't take him long to learn, especially when his learning was amplified with shadow clones. After getting to a sufficient level, he then began prioritizing his practice on ninjutsu and chakra control. He grew exponentially in these areas again with the aid of shadow clones. Truly, they were the greatest cheat to humanity. It truly is LOL. As he continued to train, Naruto began delving deeper into his mindscape, meeting the Kyuubi for the first time. At first, the meeting was rough, with both sides throwing insults at one another, but as time progressed, and his constant pestering of the Kyuubi, he was able to reach out to him by giving him access to some of his senses, allowing him to observe what he observed. With his permission, of course. He guessed his persistence began wearing away at the Kyuubi's patience. Additionally, the prospect of exploring a new land away from the influence of the sage interested Kyuubi, and he too wanted to see what was out there. Through this mutual understanding, they eventually became friends, to the point where he had given Naruto his actual name, Kurama. Naruto then began training further with the Kurama's chakra, but was making little progress with his age and conquering the bloodlust that followed. It was something he had to work on in the future. Additionally, Kurama had provided the basic details of the Rasengan, allowing Naruto to eventually recreate it, but for the moment needed the aid of clones to do so. He may have hated his biological father for abandoning him, but he did respect his power and genius, with the Rasengan being proof of that. Naruto isn't Naruto without Rasengan. As time passed, Naruto became more weary in his travels. Sure, there was much to see and explore, but he wanted more stable friendships and somewhere to settle down for a time. Although he was accustomed to sleeping outdoors, as he hunted dangerous beasts, he had no one he could call a true friend that would watch his back and hang out with him. Sure, there were coworkers he worked with as he hunted danger beasts, but it was just that. Coworkers. No relationships stemmed from that, especially when he was dozens of years younger than them. Thinking over his progress and growth, he was satisfied where he was, and supposed it was time he had a break and focused on living. Eventually, Naruto made his way to a small town south of the Empire. It was poor, with many people wearing ragged clothes, but they at least seemed content with what they had. A small-knit community, something he liked. Sure, cities were big and fun, but he wanted somewhere where he could meet people, and not just bypass them on the street. Deciding this was the place to settle down and to live life a bit more, Naruto searched for an inn and information on work. 1 year later, Naruto had spent a good year in the small town, making several friends while spending time with his new stable job in the forge, molding metal into tools. Sure, it didn't pay much, but it was good practice. He even managed to forge his own sword, a katana, something he had wanted for a time. And although he really wanted a Taiga version, they were extremely hard to find. Besides, the weapons wouldn't react to him, as he had chakra, which for some reason the sentient weapons didn't like. He still on occasion went out to hunt dangerous beasts, but that was more of a rare occurrence when he needed pocket money to spend. For now, he was more than happy to eat into his savings and enjoy his life in the small community. Naruto had also made friends his age. Sure, he was the more powerful and mature out of the bunch, but he didn't mind. To him, they were his precious people he enjoyed spending time with. There was Tatsumi with brown hair and green eyes around his age. Ayasu, don't know his color, and Seo, don't know her color. Initially, they were a close-knit group, but he managed to worm his way in with the extra help of Seo. He just didn't understand why she blushed every time he went to talk to her. Eventually, as time passed, the friends grew closer and started seeing Naruto as the big brother and leader of the group, especially with him teaching and showing them all his cool moves. Sure, they couldn't use chakra, but that didn't mean they couldn't become powerful. After all, there were ninjas that couldn't use chakra and performed exceptionally in combat. Eventually the town got poorer and poorer, even with the amount of money Naruto was bringing into the community, all because of a famine and the increasing taxes levied by the government. Eventually Naruto and the group were asked by the mayor to help keep the town alive, and agreed to help them any way they could, and left to the capital to make money and gain influence. Present day, as Naruto entered the large gates of the capital wall, he was immediately greeted to the extravagant sight of large buildings covering the courtyard where many people went about their day in entering and leaving the city. The windows were made of glass, and the buildings themselves were several stories tall, made of cement and bricks. Sure, he had seen it in other cities, but not to the extent the capital made them. He looked further and noticed more towers in the distance that were built skyward, as if attempting to reach heaven itself. Further yet, he could see the inner walls and the palace that stretched even higher into the sky. Overall, the architect was impressive and outmatched any man-made city he had come across in the Empire or in the elemental nations. No wonder the capital was seen as the seat of power. It was so vast and developed, showcasing the power of the Empire. Naruto began traveling down the vast streets of the capital paved with bricks and tiles. There were people everywhere, and the streets were packed to the point where people were almost brushing his shoulders as they walked past. Carriages driven by horses moved along the road, showcasing nobility and privilege in the empire. Even here he could see the difference between classes and the effect wealth had on social status. At least in the elemental nations, wealth didn't affect the identity of a person. As he walked down, he noticed stalls selling various merchandise and foods, as well as lampposts set up to illuminate the streets at night. There were cafes all around with tables occupied by customers drinking coffee, reading books, or engaged in conversation. He just wished the group were together to see it all at once. Before arriving at the capital, Naruto had been separated from Tatsumi, Seo, and Ieyasu after being attacked by dangerous beasts on the road. He knew they could handle themselves and would eventually meet them in the capital. Naruto himself had easily taken care of his portion of danger beasts that went after him, but the group was still separated. He had hoped they would have stayed close by and waited for him to finish instead of running off. Did they not trust his abilities? To top it off, Naruto couldn't use any sensing abilities to locate them. He could still sense chakra signatures to a degree, but in the Empire such abilities were useless when the people didn't possess chakra. Still, he had expected to sense something from them, but even Kurama mentioned the lack of energy in individuals prevented him from sensing his desired targets. Regardless, he expanded his senses, and, as he did so, he could sense an extremely strong presence in the capital. It wasn't a chakra-based sense, but he could just feel the power rolling of the individual, just like the female he had encountered long ago. Naruto concluded it was best he avoided this individual. As Naruto continued to walk, he spotted a lady with D-cup breasts held back by a thin leather strap that did nothing but emphasize the size of her chest and her curves. She was just exiting a bar with a happy smile and cheerful atmosphere about her, as if she had just scored something big. For a moment Naruto could swear he felt something from her, but played it off to instead stare at her as she walked down the street. As she passed him, he noticed she was carrying a large sack by her shoulder, and for some reason he felt that the sack was extremely familiar. Chalking it up to coincidence, he decided it was time for a break and entered the bar. As he entered the bar, he noted the square tables and chairs being occupied by customers. He looked at the wall, noting wanted posters of criminals posted up, and the bar at the far end stacked with beer bottles and wines of various types waiting to be served out. He looked around again, and to his surprise he saw Tatsumi sitting alone at one of the tables with a mixture of happiness and perverseness on his face, likely from the conspicuous female that just exited the bar. "Tatsumi, there you are. Where are Seo and Ieyasu? Also, what's with that goofy grin?" Naruto inquired, relieved to find a familiar face out of the crowd of people. Tatsumi looked up, returning from whatever dreamland he was imagining, and was momentarily shocked to see Naruto in front of him. Quickly recovering, Tatsumi replied with his famous grin, "I'm getting commissioned into the army." "Huh?" Naruto replied, momentarily confused. "What did I say about joining the military, Tatsumi? It's bad business, and dangerous. You also don't make much as a soldier." "Yeah, I know. I got this beautiful San that has connections to the military to give me a head start. She's going to inform the captain now. And pray tell, how did you get a hot lady like her to help you out?" Naruto said with a hint of mockery in his voice, yet Tatsumi didn't notice. Not bashing. "Tatsumi is cool. I paid her." Silence. "You paid her? How much?" "All my earnings from danger beast hunting with you, Naruto. She says with that amount I'll be promoted right away, and we can have a steady supply of income for the village." Another silence. Even the whole bar was quiet, listening to Tatsumi's reasoning. Then, everyone in the bar was laughing. Naruto had also joined in, finding the whole situation hilarious, and how easily Tatsumi was scammed. It went on for a good minute before Naruto recovered enough to respond to Tatsumi with a less than straight face. Kami, that's the weakest scam I've ever heard of. Tatsumi, as your teacher I got to say you have a lot to learn. Naruto barely kept himself from erupting into another fit of laughter, as everyone in the bar continued. Huh? Tatsumi intelligently replied, confused over the whole situation. You got scammed, kid, one customer inputted. Don't expect to see that, son, again. Or your money, another said momentarily before returning to his fit of laughs. And I was wondering why that sack seemed so familiar. It took a few seconds for Tatsumi to process everything that was being said. Suddenly his face turned from one of cheerful confusion to that of mortification. He rose from his chair, aggressively knocking it down in the process. We have to go after her, he shouted, mortified by being tricked by breasts. I mean lady. Naruto laughed again. Not happening. She's long gone by now. Any thief worth their 2 cents would know when to run and where to hide. She's long gone by now. Naruto spoke yet again. But what are we going to do about food and accommodation? You already spent your money on getting us passports. Silence. Crap was Naruto's only reply. Several hours later. Well, looks like we'll be spending the night on the street. Naruto spoke out, depressed over resorting to sleeping on the streets again. Sure, it was easy, but it wasn't something to be proud of. Both him and Tatsumi had spent several hours looking for work, accommodation, and anything that would help them get a quick buck in the city. Unfortunately, the hours were wasted, and only helped to explore the vastness of the city. Naruto and Tatsumi continued to walk down the deserted street, and found a spot where both could sit down, rest, and plan their next move. Naruto may have experience and skill in stealing, but it just wasn't right to do so. Who knows what struggles people would go through in the capital if he and Tatsumi were going through the same. He wasn't a heartless guy. Just Konoha didn't count since he knew everyone there were bastards. As Naruto and Tatsumi settled down on the pavement by the edge of the street whose name eluded them, a young blonde girl in a horse-driven carriage stopped and looked at both Tatsumi and Naruto as they spent their moment recovering. Stop. Do those two have a place to stay? Again, my lady? A guard spoke. I can't help it. That's my nature. The girl spoke cheerfully as she ran off to approach Naruto and Tatsumi, who continued to rest by the side of the street. The girl approached the pair, speaking out. Do you two come from the countryside? Hiya, Tatsumi responded. Naruto remained silent. For some reason he felt the girl was rubbing him the wrong way, and he didn't know why. Maybe it was the scent of human blood under all the perfume, but he could not picture the girl as a killer. She seemed so happy and cheerful. If you don't have a place to stay, do you want to come to my house? We don't have any money. You wouldn't be sleeping here if you did. Lady Arya can't leave people like you two alone. You should just accept her goodwill. So what do you want to do? Later. Whoa, Tatsumi and Naruto spoke out at the great view the interior of the mansion held. The mansion was extravagant. Both had never been inside one before, but he could tell class when he saw it. He looked around, noticing the various rooms upstairs and down, as well as a large staircase leading to the second floor from the main entrance. A typical mansion in layout, yet was exquisitely designed. There was a chandelier above, shining light below, several expensive-looking furniture skewed about the room, and different paintings and animal heads hung along the walls. Arya brought someone again. The supposed father spoke up while looking at the pair. What a habit. I wonder how many it's been now, the mother said in a happy but understanding tone. Those sentences sent ripples of warnings to Naruto's instincts. Yet again he couldn't place his tongue on why. He had learned to trust his instincts, as it saved him countless times against Konoha civilians and in the countryside, so why was it acting up here? He thought it was best to keep his guard up around these people for the time being. He then glanced at the bodyguards and noticed how tense they were. Something was amiss. Thank you very much for bringing us, and Tatsumi spoke, thanking them of their hospitality. It's okay. Make yourself at home. If we help people out, the happiness will eventually come back to us, right? Mom, that's not the reason I'm doing this. Joking, Arya cheerfully spoke yet again. Naruto still had the inkling suspicion something was up. To invite complete strangers into the house, and for the members of the house to accept them openly. Sure, there were good people in the world, but they were a rare few. Not many wealthy people he met helped others this greatly. They didn't even properly check them. The next day, we're going to that shop next, my lady. Please wait, one bodyguard spoke. It seems we're staying home this time, another guard quipped to Naruto and Tatsumi. Her shopping's amazing, isn't it? The amount is getting really silly now. It's not just limited to her. All girls are like that. Anyway, look up. That's the center of the capital, the palace. It's huge. Is that where the emperor who controls the country is? No, it's a little different. There's an emperor, all right, but he's a child right now. The one who controls that emperor from the shadows is the prime minister. He is the ringleader that's rotting this country. Naruto paid attention to the conversation and chose to remain quiet while he absorbed whatever information the guard spoke. Then the reason my village is suffering from heavy taxes. It's the capital's common sense. There are guys like that as well. Guard spoke once again, pointing to several wanted posters posted up and spread across the wall. Night raid. It's a group of assassins that's rattling the whole capital. Just as their name implies, they conduct nocturnal attacks on their targets. They mainly target high-ranking or wealthy individuals in the capital. Prepare yourself just in case. Yes, nighttime. Naruto and Tatsumi woke to the feeling of bloodlust in the distance. Naruto sniffed the air again and could smell fresh blood. Someone had recently been killed. Tatsumi grabbed his sword while Naruto took his katana out of his storage seal and rushed out of the room, preparing themselves for a fight. As Naruto ran, Tatsumi followed close behind. They saw a large arc window illuminated by the full moon and peered through into the distance. There they saw 5 figures, all their features pronounced on the wanted posters while some were unknown. Night Raid, they both spoke. They're targeting this place as well because they're wealthy. Naruto and Tatsumi peered down and saw the bodyguards rushing into the field equipped with guns and hand-to-hand combat weaponry. Naruto prepared himself to jump through the window and assist them. However, before he could make a move, the Night Raid member Akame had sliced one bodyguard while another was killed by Brat in his heavy Taiju armor. The final bodyguard fleeing the field was shot down from long range from what he could guess was a specialized gun. It was over in an instant, and from what he could see he would be hard-pressed taking them on from the level of teamwork skill and numbers he had just witnessed. Tatsumi, be careful. These guys are professionals from what they do. Try to avoid combat with them if at all possible. I'll see if I can buy us some time. Worst case scenario, I can take a few of them down with me. Without waiting for a reply, Naruto ran off to help protect the family, effectively splitting up with Tatsumi. He was sure Tatsumi would take his advice to heart and knew he could handle himself for a while. Naruto ran down the corridors, tuning himself to his surroundings and taking note of any noises, smells, or shadows moving about. It was clear from the posters and what he saw that these people were professional assassins, comparable to Black Ops Ninja in the Elemental Nations. As he went further down the corridor, the pronounced smell of blood filled the air, and bloodlust he felt was growing. As he got closer, he was just in time to see a female looking directly at him, prepared for combat, while the father of the family lay motionless on the floor in a puddle of blood. As he looked at the father, he noticed that his neck had been crushed with a few gashes, and assumed the female to be a hand-to-hand combat fighter that utilized nails or claws. As he closely inspected the female, he noticed that she was the same one from the bar, and was likely the one that scammed Tatsumi from his money. Something he still thought was well played. She, however, had a few slight differences in her appearance, as she appeared feral like he was when under the influence of the QB. She just bore the appearance of a lion with longer feral golden hair, slit yellow eyes, and even a tail to go with the transformation. A taiga, he assumed, one that came with physical changes. Well, hello handsome. What's a guy like you doing with a bunch of crooks like these? She asked in a flirty tone, either trying to have him let down his guard, or her interaction just being a part of her personality. You're the girl from the bar that scammed Tatsumi, Naruto said evenly. The girl pouted, not getting a raise out of him. Tatsumi? Who's that? Naruto would have faltered in his stance had it not been a serious situation. The only crook I can see is you. You stole from us, and killed people that gave us somewhere to stay. Why shouldn't I kill you? He spoke evenly yet again. He knew something was up with the family. There were subtle signs in their conversations, and movements that gave way to a more sinister plot. But he didn't know anything, as of yet, and couldn't form any assumptions. The lion-like female thought for a moment. Well, I can show you proof. Naruto thought it was quite the risk to take, as she could easily lead him into an ambush. But on the other hand, his instincts had been going haywire ever since he entered the mansion. The malignant smell of blood and his hesitant feelings just screamed suspicion. He supposed this was the best way to get to the bottom of things. Okay, I'll follow, but try anything, and I'll attack without hesitation. What's your name, by the way? I'm Naruto, Leon Cutie. Just follow me. Moments later, Naruto and Leon arrived in the yard of the mansion, immediately bearing witness to Akame and Tatsumi engaged in combat with one another, and Arya sprawled on the floor in fear. Tatsumi was losing with a small gash in his jacket where his heart was. Naruto immediately tensed, preparing for a fight. However, in the corner of his eyes he saw Leon walk up to Akame and catch her on the scruff of the collar just before she took the final swing. Hold up. What are you doing? We still have time, right? I owe this young lad a favor. Tatsumi looked carefully at Leon before recognizing who she was. You're the boob, Tatsumi exclaimed unceremoniously. Clearly his head wasn't in the game, and were it not a serious situation against professional assassins, Naruto would have face-palmed at his lack of guard. Yep, the beautiful Oni-san from that time, Leon quipped, not bothered where his focus was at. Young lad, you told us not to kill an innocent girl, but can you still say that after seeing this? She spoke once again while heading to the entrance of the shed. The stagnant smell of blood, death, and rotting corpses immediately filled the air as it rushed out the opening. Naruto could see Tatsumi's back and could tell he was shell-shocked. It was too dark to see inside from his position, so Naruto took a step forward, and, as his eyes began to adjust by the entrance, he now understood where the strong smell was coming from. and why. He peered into the room from its top platform. Directly in front of him he could see dozens of corpses of men and women hanging off wires attached to the roof naked. Some were hanging from their legs, others by their arms. Most were missing limbs of different types, arms, legs, eyes, heads, and more, with blood all over their body, either dripping down or dry from time. Disgusted, but unable to direct his eyes away, Naruto peered down to the lower level and could see more corpses occupying dozens more torture platforms, machetes, and large knives of various types, torture tables, torture wheels, boards with pins, drowning glass cages, beheading platforms, spinning blades, and other equipment for torture he had no idea existed were below the unassuming shed. Every corpse he looked at had an agonized expression plastered on their faces, with or without their lips. With the sound of groaning he faced the cages, and could immediately tell there were some people still alive and in constant agony. He was speechless. What is this? They lure unidentified people who came from the country with their sweet words, and subject them to their hobby of torture, and toy with them until they die. That's the true nature of this household. Naruto continued to look around, and when he looked up he saw someone he wished he didn't. Sao. Above, hanging from a wire by her arms, was the tortured form of Sao. She was naked with dry blood covering her entire body while small amounts still oozed out. Most noticeable of all was that she was missing a leg. She had almost been unrecognizable if it were not for the flower pin on the right of her head. Naruto knew that pin, as he gave it to her on her birthday, as a present, and she cherished it to the point that she kept it on her at all times. Naruto couldn't take it, and fell to his knees. Sao, a good friend of his who he was developing feelings for, was in front of him, dead, and from what he could see was tortured the entire way through, her face forever plastered with pure agony, eyes unclosed. So there was someone you know. Arya tried escaping, as quietly as possible, but Naruto could hear her steps. You're not getting off the hook by running away, little lady. The people of the house did this? Tatsumi spoke up, but it was evident he had not recovered from the shock. That's right. The guards were keeping quiet about it, so they're similarly guilty. It's a lie. I didn't know there was a place like this, Arya said, trying to cover up. It was hard to tell, as Naruto couldn't feel any uncertainty in her voice. Are you going to believe me? The one that saved you too, or these guys? Naruto, Tatsumi Naruto. It's me. Naruto looked to one of the cages, and could see Ayasu in a cage reaching out. That girl invited Sao and me. After we ate, we lost consciousness, and we were here when we came. That girl, she tortured Sao to death. What's so wrong? Alice spoke, as if she stood on a divine platform above others. She pushed herself free from Leon, and began talking in pure insanity. It was now clear what was going on. The family of the mansion was truly insane. You're just worthless hicks from the country, right? I should be free to treat them however I want, the same as cattle. Besides, that girl was so important for having straight hair for a farm animal. Even though I'm troubled with such unruly hair, that's why I agonized her so meticulously. In fact, she should be grateful I took such good care of her. A family of sadists that takes the guise of Samaritans. Sorry for getting in your way, Akame. Leon spoke seriously. It was clear she was disgusted with what she saw and heard. Eliminate. Naruto stood back up, unsealing his katana again, surprising Akame and Leon in the act. He prepared himself to kill Alice. Wait. Tatsumi spoke up, halting Naruto from the act while also putting his hand on the hilt of the sword on his back. He looked at him, and knew the look. Tatsumi was serious, and seeing he was closer to both Sao and Ayasu, he knew not to interfere with what would happen next. Don't tell me, are you trying to defend her again? No, Tatsumi spoke evenly, knowing what he was going to do, and was supportive of the act the entire way. I'll kill her. Tatsumi suddenly moved forward in a normal slash stance with both hands on the sword while slashing at Arya with as much power as he could. She grunted out one final time before succumbing to death. That's Tatsumi for you. That felt great, hack. Ayasu spoke out before coughing sporadically. Ayasu, Tatsumi spoke out, as they rushed to the cage. Naruto broke apart the bars with his brute strength while Tatsumi went in and grabbed Ayasu. Akame spoke out, looking at both of us. It's the last stage of Labora disease. The mistress here enjoyed putting people on drugs and writing how they were doing in the diary. He can't be saved anymore. Naruto, Tatsumi, you know Sao, she didn't submit to that fucking girl. Even to the very end, Ayasu began speaking out. It was so cool. So for my death, this Ayasu-sama here will also keep it real. Ayasu spoke out for the final time in the arms of Tatsumi, as he clenched his fist with a smile on his face, truly keeping it real to the very end. He was already in a state where he was hanging on by willpower alone. What's wrong with the capital? Tatsumi spoke, remorseful with all the events transpiring within the hour. Let's go. Akame spoke evenly, as if it were another job for her. Hey, why don't we bring them back with us? Our hideouts are always short-handed. Leon spoke her thoughts while dragging Tatsumi. Naruto, unsure what to do, decided to follow, but not before sealing the bodies of Ayasu and Sao for burial a heavy expression on his face as he did so. "Let me go!" Tatsumi screamed out. A short while later, on the rooftops of the city, the remaining members of Night Raid could be found hanging off some wires connected across different roofs. "So they're finally back," a heavily armored man spoke, likely brought from the wanted posters. "It'd be bad if we don't retreat soon." An unknown man with distinct green hair spoke. "You're late." "What were you doing? Hell, who are they?" A young girl with pink hair tied in 2 pigtails spoke this time. Tatsumi was still thrashing as he was dragged by the collar. "Starting today you're with us. Congrats on your inaugurations into Night Raid." Leon spoke out with a feral grin, with her Taiguo still active. Naruto took the information in stride. If what was happening to the capital was anything to go by, along with all the corruption he saw in his travels, something needed to be done, so for the moment, he took the sudden development in stride. That, and he was more focused on the sudden passing of Ayasu and Seo. He wasn't thinking as clearly as he normally does, since those two were some of his only friends, and to know they died tortured to death saddened him. He was supposed to protect them and keep them safe. Instead he failed, and it hurt. "What the hell's up with that?" Tatsumi spoke, interrupting Naruto's line of thought. "Give it up. Leon won't listen once she gets started. As expected of my bud. You know me well," Leon said before shoving Tatsumi to the armored figure of the group. "Busalaki, I'll leave this guy to you. Let me go. I have no intention of becoming an assassin." "It's okay. It'll get better soon. Mission complete. Let's return." Everyone from Night Raid began jumping across rooftops in formation, with Tatsumi in the arms of the armored member, and Naruto following close by. Onwards to the new adventure. Thanks for watching my video, and make sure to check out the author of this fanfic. Link is in the description. See you next time. Till then, sayonara.